All right, this video is going to be about some muscle lab stuff. So I'll show you some muscle models and microscope slides. So for starters, this is a model of a muscle fiber. So this is the sarcolemma going around it. And then these are the myofibrils, each of these tubes. And then within the myofibrils, the myofilaments would be those tiny looking things. So surrounding the myofibrils, you have this tannish stuff. This would be the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which stores the calcium. The blue, in this case, would be the transverse tubules, or T-tubules. Other things you can see, this is a motor neuron coming in to synapse with the muscle fiber to stimulate it to contract. All these little oval-looking structures, these are just mitochondria, the organelles used for energy that produce ATP. And other things that this is supposed to be acetylcholine being released. That's the neurotransmitter at the neuromuscular junction. Then if you look at the backside of this model, you can still see the neuron right here, but you also see this covering. This would be the endomysium that surrounds each muscle fiber. So here's a similar model, not quite as good, but it's a muscle fiber. Here's your sarcolemma. Here's the endomysium. In this model, the myofibrils are really small. So each one of these tiny tubes is supposed to be a myofibril. And if we look at it, you can kind of see the sarcomeres and with the different colors. This is the neuromuscular junction. The motor end plate is the area of the muscle fiber that interacts with the neuron. So here's the neuron coming in. So this is a model of the of a sarcomere, and I'm just going to adjust this really quickly to make it more visible. Okay. So if we look at this view from here to here, that's one sarcomere. So this tube looking thing would be a myofibril. So Z disc to Z disc, here's your M line. The blue would be the myosin filament, and then this reddish filament here and here, these are actin filaments. If you look closely, you can see the troponin, which is the little kind of green dot, and then that yellow strip, that's the tropomyosin. So tropomyosin, troponin, actin, myosin. And then the other thing are the zones. So we got the A band that runs from the entire length of the myosin filament. You have the H zone, which is only where there's myosin, so from here to here. And then from here going into the next theoretical sarcomere, we would have the I band. Then we put this covering on it. The green covering is supposed to represent the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The yellow line is supposed to represent the T-tubules. And in reality, if you were looking at this model, the Z disc would slide back and forth, so you could envision the sliding filament theory of muscle contraction. So some other models, this is cardiac muscle. So you see the intercalated disc right here. So it looks similar to skeletal. If you look, you still see the striations. Got the T-tubules, the sarcoplasmic reticulum, but it makes it different. You have the intercalated disc with the gap junctions, and then they're branched fibers. This is another cardiac muscle fiber here, so you see the branches. Not quite as good of a model though. And then this is a model of smooth muscle. And so remember, smooth muscle has this kind of shape, fusiform shape, fat in the middle, tapered on the ends. And these little dots like here and here and here, these are the dense bodies that the myofilaments pull together and make the smooth muscle contract. So moving on to just identifying some muscles. So I do have a handout on the facial muscles that I wanted to go through. So I'm going to pull that up really quick before we go through this. So this is posted on Canvas, and I circled the muscles that we're going to focus on. So you got the one that goes around the eye, the orbiculus oculi. You have kind of the raise your eyebrows, the corrugator supercilii. The temporalis we've already covered, the masseter we've covered. I'm going to work my way down this way. So you got the zygomaticus minor and zygomaticus major. These are the smiling muscles that make you smile. Orbiculus oris is this rounded muscle that goes around the lips. This is called the kissing muscle. Platysma is the muscle in the neck, kind of like the skin of the neck, that makes the skin on the neck tighten up. Depressor anguli oris would be the frowning muscle. And the buccinator is this muscle in here in your cheek. It's beneath the masseter. So going back to this picture, you can see the corrugator supercilii, the orbiculus oculi, zygomaticus minor and major. Buccinator is in there, you can barely see it. Orbiculus oris, and the depressor muscle is right here. Coming over here, the only thing I'm going to add here that you can see all the similar muscles, but I like this one because you can see the sternocleidomastoid right here, which forms the triangles of the neck. So eye muscles are actually really easy. So you have four muscles called rectus muscles. So superior, inferior, lateral, medial, depending on which eye you're looking at. And then you have two oblique muscles. So you inferior oblique, which kind of runs at an angle, and superior oblique up here. And that's it. Those are the muscles that move the eye. So those muscles are relatively easy. So you just need to know medial versus lateral. And then superior versus inferior, obviously. And here's a model where you can see some of it. You can see the superior rectus, superior oblique. This would be the lateral rectus, and you can't see much else. So getting into some of the bigger muscles that we've covered, this is not supposed to be an all-inclusive list. Remember, the all-inclusive list is in the lecture on axial and appendicular muscles. But some of these would be fair lab test questions, like you see the sartorius right here, the rectus femoris, these are rectus abdominis with the tendinous intersections, linea alba, pectoralis minor, pectoralis major. See the sternocleidomastoid again up here, biceps brachii muscle, and then we'll get into some of the forearm muscles on the next few slides. So zooming in on the legs, here's your sartorius, rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis. The vastus intermedius would be here where you've taken away the rectus femoris. This is actually the adductor longus, and the only way to know that is to see this view. But in the other pictures I gave you, remember the adductor magnus went further down. You can't really see that here. Moving on, you have tibialis anterior, you can see right here. And some of your obliques, you can see that this would be the external oblique, and then this would be the internal oblique. You can just tell by the way the fibers are running. Remember in the lecture we talked about the direction that the fibers run. That's really important for the obliques. Looking at the back, you get the rhomboids, major, minor. You have the, we'll get into some of these rotator cuff muscles on the next slide, but supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and then it's supposed to be the teres minor right there, you can barely see. Trapezius, this big triangular one. Latissimus dorsi is this big one, a big back muscle. And then obviously the deltoid right here on the shoulder. If we come over here, oh, I think there was one I wanted to show you over here also. I just wanted to point out here, you can also see the serratus anterior. I didn't point that one out. Okay, back of the leg, you got your biceps femoris, which goes to the lateral side. Then the semimembranosus, semitendinosus go to the medial side. So in this view, this would be the tendinosus. In the membranosus, you can barely see because it's underneath. So gluteus maximus right here. Running inside the thigh, that would be the gracilis. And then here's your gastrocnemius, calf muscle, the superficial calf muscle, and there's your Achilles tendon going down to the calcaneus. This view is torso again, so rectus abdominis we've talked about. Looking at the back, the only other thing I'm going to point out here, erector spinae muscle here, running up and down the back. And moving on to the arm, so deltoid here, this is the front of the arm, front of the left arm, so this would be the subscapularis and biceps brachii. And here's your coracobrachialis coming through here. All right, this is showing after if you remove the biceps brachii muscle. This is the brachialis underneath it. And again, you see the coracobrachialis here. So brachialis, biceps, brachii right here. So deltoid here shown. This is the back of the arm, so this would be the triceps muscle group. So looking at, let's see if I have another view of this. I'm going to come here and just show you, this is the back of kind of the scapula. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, teres major. Okay, so all of those except the teres major are part of the rotator cuff muscle group. So looking at the extensors of the wrist and digits, so these are some of the more difficult ones. So these are extensors because we're looking at the back of the forearm. So it's, even though it's not an extensor, you can see right here, this is the brachioradialis. You remember inserts into the styloid process. Oops. So brachioradialis. Then we have extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, right here. And then this one, you can follow it going out to the digits, extensor digitorum. And then over here, you have extensor carpi ulnaris, going to the pinky side. And if we move to the flexors, which I have two views of this. So these are pretty much the same thing. I'm just going to focus on this one because it's a little bit bigger. But this is the left arm. So flexor carpi radialis would be this one, going to the thumb side. Flexor carpi ulnaris goes to the pinky side here. And then underneath, well, let's do this one first. So this is the palmaris longus, really thin muscle on top. And then underneath it, where it says number 26, that's the flexor digitorum superficialis. So remember, it flexes the fingers. So you can see it here, and then also underneath here. In this model, this is the palmaris longus, right here, right down the middle. All right, there's another view of the extensors, but we've gone through that. All right, and then these little models, very similar concept. We can't really see a whole lot more than what we've already seen, just different views. So you could practice identifying some of these muscles. Notice on the arm of this muscles, these muscles get really small when you're talking about the size. So these are relatively small models. So don't stress if you can't see each forearm muscle. Just focus on the big things in this area, kind of like we did our sartorius. You get your obliques, rectus abdominis, etc. Looking at the back, only one we haven't seen yet here is the levator scapula. And I'll point out also here serratus anterior. Get your rhomboids, latissimus dorsi, trapezius, triceps, gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, your hamstrings, biceps femoris, semimembranosus and tendinosus. So on this side, you can see the difference. Here's tendinosus and here's semimembranosus underneath. And in this model, here's the gastrocnemius, and they cut it away here so that this big muscle underneath the gastrocnemius would be the soleus. All right, and then we're going to finish up with some surface anatomy. So I put a handout on Canvas about surface anatomy, and that's really all you need to know, but I just wanted to show you some pictures also. So that handout is going to look like this. I'm going to show you. So it's just going to be a list of surface anatomy. These are just things that you can see with the naked eye of the body. So we're going to run through some of these, but for the most part, if you know where these are, you'll be fine. But I do have pictures of some. There's 2 pages to it. So if I go back to here, just want to point out that here's the McBurney's point right here, used to attest for appendicitis. Anatomical snuff box is this tiny little area made, this little triangular area looks like a little indentation. Triangle of auscultation used to listen to the lung sounds is right here. Antecubital fossa used commonly to take put a stethoscope to take blood pressure. It's front of the elbow. The median bicipital furrow or groove is this groove between the biceps and triceps. And then the gluteal, I have a couple of slides actually that show this, but this is the supracrystalline. If you kind of made an imaginary line across your iliac crest and your back, and they're showing it here, they're not calling it that, but we'll call it the supracrystalline. And then the gluteal fold is kind of at the bottom of the butt, and the natal cleft is between the butt, so between like the gluteus maximus muscles. Triangles of the neck formed by the sternocleidomastoid. And then they mentioned a ventrogluteal injection point, so it's formed in this little triangle on the side of the hip. And lastly, the femoral triangle on either sides of the groin area. So I'm going to finish up with some microscope slides. So this is skeletal muscle. You've seen it before. This is also skeletal muscle. It's just showing neuromuscular junction. Same thing here. If you look here, like those kind of rounded areas, that's basically the neuromuscular junction where you got a motor neuron coming in and it's synapsing with a skeletal muscle fiber. So this is cardiac muscle, should be striated. You can't really see a whole lot of striations there, but you see some. And then these dark lines again would be the intercalated disc. And I'm giving you another view of smooth muscle this time, just to show what, because previously we saw teased smooth muscle, and now you're just seeing it, what it looks like when all the cells are together. So this is kind of what it would look like if you're looking at the intestines or any organ that has a significant amount of smooth muscle.